An abandoned girl shared his only snack with a wounded German shepherd. Then fate stepped in with a miracle. The wind cut through the bare trees like icy fingers, rustling dead leaves across the cracked sidewalk of the small, forgotten park on the edge of town. Snow had not yet fallen, but the sky hung heavy with gray, and the cold clung to everything like a silent warning. 10-year-old Lila sat curled on a bench beneath a crooked lamppost that flickered with exhaustion. Her arms wrapped tightly around her thin coat, her sneakers soaked from the slush that lined the ground. In her lap rested a crumpled napkin containing her only possession of value, a single oatmeal cookie she had saved from a donation box 2 days ago. Her stomach grumbled. She stared at the cookie, then looked around the empty park, half expecting someone to appear and take it away. No one came. No one ever did. She broke the cookie in half with frozen fingers and was about to take a bite when a sound stopped her. It was faint, a low, shaky whimper, barely audible over the wind. Lila froze, cookie still in hand, head tilting toward the bushes behind the old swing set. Another whimper followed, a little louder this time, followed by the rustle of leaves. She hesitated only a second before climbing off the bench and creeping toward the sound. Behind the bushes, beneath a broken section of chain-link fence, she found the source. A large German shepherd lay curled against the frozen dirt, one paw stretched awkwardly, soaked with dried and fresh blood. His eyes opened when he saw her, wary but not aggressive. His breathing was shallow. He did not move. Lila knelt slowly, careful not to scare him. "Hey, boy," she whispered. "Are you okay?" The dog flinched, but did not growl. His tail gave the faintest twitch. She looked down at the cookie still clutched in her hand, then back at him. He looked starved, and hurt, and cold. Without a second thought, she reached out, broke her half of the cookie into smaller pieces, and laid them gently on the ground just a few feet from his nose. "It's not much," she said softly, "but I'll share." The dog sniffed, then with great effort dragged himself forward. He licked up the crumbs, his eyes never leaving hers. When he finished, he licked her hand gently, then rested his head against her leg and let out a low sigh, his body trembling. Lila, startled at first, slowly sat down beside him. "I guess you're alone too," she murmured, running a gentle hand through his matted fur. "It's okay, we can be alone together." The sky darkened, the cold deepened, but in that quiet corner of the world, a little girl and a wounded dog leaned into each other, sharing not just warmth and crumbs, but the unspoken comfort of knowing neither was completely forgotten. For the next 2 days, Lila wandered through back alleys and side streets with the wounded German shepherd limping faithfully beside her. She had named him Ranger. It just felt right, like he had once belonged to someone strong and noble, someone who had left him behind. The name seemed to bring him comfort. Every time she whispered it, his ears twitched slightly, as if remembering something distant and kind. At night, they curled up together inside an old bus-stop shelter, the glass panels cracked and fogged with cold. Lila gave Ranger her coat, draping it gently over his shivering body while she pressed close for warmth. She had long grown used to sleeping on concrete, but something about having Ranger beside her made the dark feel a little less empty. By day, they searched for food. Lila knew where the restaurant dumpsters were, and which diners tossed out burned toast or leftover fries near closing. On the third afternoon, behind a small diner on the corner of Maple and 6th, she was rummaging through a trash bin when a gruff voice startled her. "Hey, what are you doing back here?" Lila spun around, her eyes wide. A tall man stood near the back door, holding a garbage bag. He looked stern, but not unkind. His face was wrinkled, with a gray beard and tired eyes behind smudged glasses. I wasn't stealing," Lila stammered. Just looking for something to eat. For me and my dog." She motioned to Ranger, who lay curled behind a stack of boxes, watching cautiously. The man's eyes fell on the dog's injured leg, then on Lila's dirt-smeared face and trembling hands. He hesitated, then sighed. "You shouldn't be out here, either of you." "We don't have anywhere else to go," she whispered. The man, Mr. Thomas as his name tag read, looked long and hard at her before speaking. "I used to be a vet," he muttered. "Animal doctor, not the war kind. Retired a while ago." He stepped forward, crouched near Ranger and extended his hand. "Let me see that leg, boy." Ranger sniffed cautiously, then allowed him to touch the wound. Mr. Thomas shook his head. "This needs cleaning, bandages, antibiotics. You're lucky he's still walking." He stood, looked at Lila. "I can help, but you have to come with me." Lila hesitated only a moment, then nodded. Mr. Thomas led them to his nearby clinic, mostly empty now, save for some old equipment and dusty counters. He cleaned Ranger's wound, wrapped it gently, and gave him pain medication. He made Lila a peanut butter sandwich and poured her a glass of milk. The next morning he made a call. Lila watched from the waiting room, clutching Ranger's collar. Later that day, a kind-looking woman arrived from social services. "My name's Maya," she said gently. "We just want to help you, sweetheart, you and Ranger both." Lila didn't want to leave. She cried, begged to stay, but Mr. Thomas reassured her. "It's just for a little while. He'll be safe here, and so will you." But that night, Ranger didn't sleep. He whined softly, pawed at the door, and when Mr. Thomas dozed off on the couch, the dog pushed the latch open with his nose and limped into the rainy streets. Across town, at the group home, Lila stared out the window, her heart heavy. She waited until the lights dimmed, then slipped out, barefoot and soaked, into the night. They found each other just past midnight, near the old bus stop where it all began. Ranger saw her first, limped toward her with a weak bark. "Ranger!" she cried, running into his open paws. She dropped to her knees, hugging him tightly as tears streamed down her cheeks, her voice trembling. "I thought they took you away forever." In the pouring rain, under a flickering street lamp, they clung to each other like they had lost the world, and found it again. The next morning, Maya found them asleep together beneath the old bus stop shelter, Lila's arms wrapped tightly around Ranger's neck, both of them soaked to the bone but peaceful, as if the world had finally gone quiet. She knelt beside them, her voice soft but firm. "Let's get you both home." Home, as it turned out, was not just a word anymore. Maya pulled every string she could, talked to the director of a special program designed for children who had formed therapeutic bonds with animals, a place called Willowhaven, a transitional group home for kids in crisis, where approved pets could stay with them as part of healing. Thanks to Maya's persistence and a letter of recommendation from Mr. Thomas, Lila and Ranger were accepted together. When they arrived, Lila clung to Ranger's side, unsure of what to expect, but the space was warm, filled with books, quiet corners, and laughter. Other kids, some shy, some loud, all curious, came forward to pet Ranger, who sniffed them politely and wagged his tail, just once, slow and steady. Ranger was given a soft bed in Lila's room, but he preferred sleeping beside her mattress. The staff at Willowhaven noticed something quickly. Though he walked with a limp and still had healing to do, Ranger had a gift. He sensed things. When a little girl in the dorm had a panic attack during the night, it was Ranger who pawed at her door until a counselor came. When two older boys began to fight in the hallway, Ranger stepped between them with a gentle growl, forcing them to pause. He was never aggressive, only present, calm, knowing. Lila began to bloom in the safety of that presence. She returned to school, started helping with chores at the shelter, feeding the cats, brushing the dogs. She wrote stories in her notebook, one of which was titled "The Dog Who Found Me First." She smiled more, ate more, slept without nightmares. Within weeks, everyone at Willowhaven knew them simply as Lila and Ranger. They were inseparable. Ranger waited at the school gates each day, sitting like a guardian until Lila returned. And when new kids arrived, it was often Lila who held their hand, and Ranger who laid his head in their lap. One chilly afternoon, the children were playing in the open yard behind the center. Lila was helping a staff member organize books inside when she heard someone scream. She dropped everything and ran out. In the street beyond the fence, a small boy named Ethan had chased a ball into the road. A car was speeding around the bend, the driver not yet aware of the child directly in its path. But Ranger saw. The dog darted from the yard through the open gate, faster than anyone thought possible on 3 good legs. He reached Ethan just in time, using his body to shove the boy out of the car's path. The car screeched to a halt, but not before clipping Ranger and sending him tumbling across the pavement. Screams erupted. Lila shoved through the crowd, her breath caught in her throat. She found Ranger lying still, his side heaving, one paw bent at an odd angle. "No, no, no, no," she whispered, dropping beside him. Ranger opened his eyes slowly and nudged her hand, the same way he had that very first night in the park. "You saved him," she said through tears. "Just like you saved me." The center fell silent as the staff rushed to help. Ranger's eyes never left Lila's, even as they lifted him into the van headed for the emergency vet. In that moment, everyone understood Ranger was not just a pet. He was a protector, a healer, a hero. And Lila? She was no longer just the girl who had shared her last cookie. She was part of a story bigger than both of them. A story still being written, one brave act at a time. The emergency surgery took nearly 4 hours. The veterinary team worked tirelessly, trying to repair the internal bleeding and the fracture in Ranger's hind leg. It was complicated by his age and the fact that he had never fully recovered from his first injury. The odds were not in his favor, but Ranger had something more powerful than luck. He had purpose, and he had Lila. Maya stayed with Lila the entire night in the waiting room. They sat side by side on the stiff plastic chairs, watching the lights flicker through the swinging hospital doors. Lila did not cry this time. She simply held Ranger's old collar tight in her hands, whispering softly under her breath, "Come back to me, please come back." When the vet finally emerged, his expression was tired but hopeful. "Made it through," he said. "He is a fighter. He's going to need time, and he may never run again, but he is still very much alive." Lila broke into a breathless laugh, her eyes wide with disbelief. "He made it? He's really okay?" "He's resting," the vet nodded. "And he'll be happy to see you when he wakes up." But there was another challenge ahead, the cost. The surgery and recovery would be thousands of dollars, far more than Willow Haven or Maya could afford. So they did the only thing they could. They told the world. Maya helped Lila create a simple online fundraiser. She uploaded a photo of Lila and Ranger curled up together on the bus stop bench, along with a title that simply read, "The Girl Who Shared Her Cookie," and "The Dog Who Gave Everything Back." Within hours, the story began to spread. Local news picked it up, then national outlets. Strangers from across the country donated. Some gave $5, others gave hundreds. Children sent in drawings of Ranger wearing superhero capes. Veterans left messages saying they had once served with dogs just like him. Animal shelters shared the story, and so did teachers, therapists, and parents. By the end of the week, they had not only covered the cost of Ranger's surgery, they had enough left over to sponsor medical care for other animals in need at Willow Haven. Ranger returned home to the center in a special wagon decorated with ribbons and paw print stickers. His back leg was braced, his walk forever slowed, but his eyes were bright and his tail wagged the moment he saw Lila waiting at the front gate. She dropped to her knees, arms open wide. "You came back to me," she whispered, just like he had that night in the rain. He leaned his head into her chest, letting out a soft, happy huff. They were whole again. Months passed, and life at Willow Haven grew warmer. Lila kept up with her schoolwork, helped train new rescue dogs, and even led storytelling sessions for younger children. Ranger was always nearby, moving slower, yes, but still alert, still ready to sit beside a crying child or gently press his head into someone's lap when they needed it most. And then came the school's annual award ceremony. Lila, now standing tall and confident, was chosen to receive the Compassion Award for her courage, kindness, and unwavering heart. As she stepped onto the stage, wearing a borrowed dress and holding Ranger's leash, the room fell silent. She looked out at the sea of faces, then down at Ranger sitting loyally at her feet. With a steady voice she said, "A long time ago I thought I had nothing, no home, no family, not even a full meal. But then I met Ranger. I gave him half a cookie, and he gave me everything. Ranger isn't just a dog I saved. He's the family I never had, the one I always needed." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. As applause erupted, Ranger lifted his head and let out one soft bark, as if to say, "I know, me too." Lila never forgot that moment on stage, standing in front of a room full of strangers who had become family, holding the leash of the dog who had once limped into her life when no one else had. It was the turning point, the quiet beginning of the life she had only ever dreamed about. Shortly after the ceremony, a kind couple named the Harpers, longtime supporters of Willow Haven, reached out. They had followed Lila and Ranger's story since the fundraiser. After meeting them, after sitting with Lila and listening to her speak about Ranger with a depth and tenderness far beyond her years, the Harpers did something extraordinary. They opened their home, not just to Lila, but to Ranger too. There were no cages, no curfews, no separation this time. The Harpers brought her into their world with warmth, stability, and a promise. Wherever you go, Ranger goes too. It was all Lila needed to hear. Their home was tucked at the edge of a quiet town, with wide-open fields and a porch that caught every sunset. Ranger had his own bed by the fireplace, though he still preferred the floor by Lila's feet. He aged gracefully, his fur graying, his pace slowing. But he never stopped watching over her, never stopped waiting at the door when she went out, never stopped being hers. Lila flourished. She did well in school, and she wrote endlessly. Every spare moment she scribbled stories into notebooks, most of them featuring a brave German shepherd and a girl who believed in second chances. When she was 16, she finished her first real book. It was called The Biscuit That Saved Us. A small publisher took a chance on it. It became a surprise bestseller. Schools across the country began using it in classrooms. Libraries featured it in read-aloud sessions. Parents wrote letters. Kids sent fan art. But Lila always said the same thing when asked where the story came from. It was never just a story. It was my life. The years passed, and college came. Lila was accepted into a creative writing program on the East Coast. She was ready, except for one thing. Ranger, now old and stiff with arthritis, could no longer manage stairs. On move-in day, as Lila stood at the bottom of her dorm building, watching him struggle to lift one paw after the other, she didn't hesitate. She dropped her bag, bent down, and scooped him into her arms, just like he had once protected her, carried her through the cold. Now it was her turn. Inside the dorm room, she placed him gently on a blanket near the window, the best seat in the house. He let out a low, contented sigh. That night, with her desk lamp casting a warm glow and her first manuscript pinned to the wall, Lila curled beside him, resting her cheek on his side. His breathing was slow but steady. She whispered into his ear, voice soft, breaking just a little. "I saved you that day, Ranger, but you saved me forever." If this story of Lila and Ranger moved your heart, reminded you of the power of love, loyalty, and second chances, then you're exactly where you're meant to be. At Amazing Paws Stories, we share real, emotional tales just like this one. Stories that prove even the smallest act of kindness can change a life or two. Whether it's a shared cookie, a warm blanket, or a bond that lasts a lifetime, these stories remind us that miracles often come with wagging tails and open hearts. Subscribe to Amazing Paws Stories today to join our growing family of animal lovers, story seekers, and everyday heroes. And remember, sometimes When you rescue them, they rescue you right back.